In a world where classic cars carry the memories of decades past and each detail holds a piece of history, the Jensen Interceptor stands as a remarkable blend of British craftsmanship, Italian design, and American muscle. The Jensen Interceptor was built by Jensen Motors, a company that started in West Bromwich, England in the early 1930s. Alan Jensen and Richard Jensen began by making car and truck bodies. They later added their own designs to the vehicles they built. Before the well-known Interceptor of the 1960s, Jensen had produced an earlier car that also carried the name Interceptor between 1950 and 1957. That first Interceptor used a 4.0-liter Austin straight-six engine and was built using parts from the Austin shear line. In 1950, the car was offered as a two-door saloon and convertible with design work by Eric Neal. Production was very limited, with fewer than 100 examples built, and the car used a mix of aluminum and steel panels on a wood frame. By the early 1960s, Jensen Motors had gained a reputation for making bodywork for other companies. They had built parts for the Austin Healey sports cars and worked on Volvo models. In 1962, Jensen launched the CV8 model. The CV8 was built on an updated chassis and used a Chrysler V8 engine. This model set the stage for a new design approach. The CV8 moved away from the use of fiberglass and wood and paved the way for a more modern car design. In 1966, Jensen introduced the new Interceptor as a replacement for the CV8. The new Interceptor featured a steel body instead of the older fiberglass panels. The change to a steel body improved the car's durability and structural strength. The 1966 Interceptor was officially shown at the London Motor Show. Jensen chose to work with Italian design houses for this new model, which brought a fresh look compared to the typical British designs of that time. The car combined elements from previous Jensen models with a new body design that had clean, angular shapes. Early prototypes of the Interceptor were sent to Italy, where Vignale, an Italian coach builder, built the initial bodies. Later on, Jensen moved the production of the bodywork back to their own factory in West Bromwich to keep production close to the assembly line and to make it easier to update the design quickly. The production of the new Interceptor continued from 1966 until 1976, and during that time, about 6,408 cars were built. Jensen Motors decided to use the Interceptor name once more, even though it had been used earlier. They did this to remind people of their earlier reputation for making exclusive vehicles. Unlike earlier models that used British engines, the new Interceptor was built with American-sourced Chrysler engines and automatic transmissions. This switch to Chrysler power provided the Interceptor with a smooth and strong engine, capable of driving a heavy Grand Tourer with ease. However, financial problems and production challenges eventually forced Jensen to end production in 1976 when the available parts ran out and the company faced increasing economic difficulties. Jensen Motors built the Interceptor during a time when many British manufacturers were trying to update their designs and meet international market demands. The new Interceptor was designed to be competitive not only in Britain but also in the United States. The car's design was a blend of British craftsmanship, American mechanical components, and Italian styling, which set it apart from many of its competitors. Every stage of the development of the Interceptor, from the early prototypes built in Italy to the final assembly in West Bromwich, was aimed at creating a car that was suitable for long journeys while still offering a sporty performance. In its early years, Jensen Motors had worked on many different projects. They had experience with commercial vehicles and military production during World War II. After the war, the company returned to making sports cars and luxury vehicles. The Interceptor of 1966 was a part of this long line of vehicles and marked a turning point for Jensen Motors. It was built with a mix of ideas from different sources and represented a clear shift in manufacturing techniques, combining a modern steel body with the power of American V8 engines. The design and styling of the Jensen Interceptor are influenced by the work of Italian coach builders and stand apart from the usual British car designs of the time. The body was first designed by Carrozzeria Touring, a firm based in Milan, Italy. Their design provided the Interceptor with a clean and angular look that caught the attention of many at motor shows. The car's exterior was made entirely from steel panels. This decision was made to improve rigidity and to solve some of the issues that were common with fiberglass. With the steel body, the car became easier to repair over time. One of the most noticeable features of the Interceptor is its large wraparound rear window. This window is not just a decorative element, it is a functional rear hatch that opens upward to give access to a storage area. The curved shape of the rear window was quite unusual for the time and helped set the Interceptor apart from other Grand Tourers. At the front, the car featured a simple grille and a pair of quad round headlights mounted in a squared-off assembly. Over the years, small changes were made to the grille and bumper design, but the overall look of the car remained largely consistent throughout its production. Early models of the Interceptor, built by Vignale in Italy, sometimes showed slight differences compared to the later models built in West Bromwich. The Italian-built models often had hand-finished details such as differences in the placement of chrome trims and the exact curvature of the body panels. When production was moved back to England, Jensen made minor adjustments to simplify the manufacturing process. These changes included slight modifications to door handles, window seals, and the overall fit and finish of the panels. These differences can be seen when comparing the early Mark I models to the later ones, although the basic shape of the car remained the same throughout its production. Inside the car, the design was practical and focused on providing comfort for long drives. The dashboard layout was simple and functional. It had round analog gauges for the speed, fuel level, and engine temperature. The materials used in the interior were chosen for both their appearance and durability. Leather was used on the seats and the steering wheel, while wood trim was applied to the dashboard and door panels. In the later models, the interior was updated to include features such as optional air conditioning and revised seat designs. These updates were made to meet the changing demands of the market, especially in the United States, where comfort and modern conveniences were important. The seating arrangement in the Jensen Interceptor was set up for 4 people. The front seats were designed to be comfortable for both short trips and long journeys, and the rear seats offered enough legroom despite the car's low-slung design. The controls on the dashboard were placed in a way that made them easy to reach and read. The radio and clock were placed in standard positions for cars of that era. The interior design of the Interceptor remained fairly consistent during its production, which helped keep the same feel across different model years. The design details of the Interceptor extended to the exterior trim and the design of the wheels. Early Interceptors came with fully chrome-plated wheels, but later models saw the introduction of alloy wheels made by GKN. The alloy wheels were chosen for their strength and lighter weight, which helped improve the car's overall performance and handling. Small details, such as the shape of the headlamp bezels and the form of the side gills, were refined during the changes from the Mark I to the Mark II and then to the Mark III. Each of these changes was made with the idea of modernizing the appearance without straying too far from the original design. The Jensen Interceptor was powered by engines from the American manufacturer Chrysler. In its first versions, the car used a 6.3-liter V8 engine, known as the 383 cubic inch engine. This engine was chosen because it was reliable and had enough power for a heavy Grand Tourer. Early models produced around 325 horsepower at a specific engine speed, which allowed the car to reach top speeds over 130 miles per hour. The engine was paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission known as the TorqueFlite. The TorqueFlite was known for being a robust and common choice at that time. In 1971, Jensen introduced a significant update to the Interceptor. The earlier 6.3-liter engine was replaced with a larger 7.2-liter engine, also built by Chrysler. This engine was rated to have a higher power output and was used in the later models of the Interceptor. One special version that used this new engine was called the Jensen SP. The SP version had a special setup with triple 2-barrel carburetors, a configuration that was often called the 6-pack. This setup increased the power output further, with some models producing around 385 horsepower. Only about 232 SP models were built, making them a rare and notable part of the Interceptor family. The choice of engines in the Interceptor was directly tied to the car's performance. The Chrysler V8 engines were known for their smooth power delivery and durability. They had a cast iron cylinder block and used an overhead valve, OHV design, which was typical of American V8 engines at the time. The performance figures, such as the car accelerating from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 7 seconds for the SP variant, were competitive with many other Grand Tourers of that era. Although the car was built for performance rather than fuel economy, some models achieved around 12 miles per gallon. The combination of the Chrysler engine and the TorqueFlite transmission gave the Interceptor a smooth and powerful driving experience. The transmission was a 3-speed automatic gearbox that was known for its durability and ease of maintenance, and it was paired with a limited slip differential to improve traction on the rear wheels. An interesting variant of the Interceptor was the Jensen FF. While the FF shared many mechanical components with the standard Interceptor, it was a separate model that featured a full-time 4-wheel drive system. The Jensen FF used the same Chrysler V8 engines, but modifications were made to send power to all 4 wheels. In addition, the FF was one of the first production cars to be fitted with an anti-lock braking system, ABS, which was a rare feature at that time. Although the FF looked very similar to the regular Interceptor, the additional technology gave it better performance on poor road surfaces. Only about 320 FF models were built between 1966 and 1971, and these models are often mentioned separately when discussing performance. The engine components for the Interceptor came from Chrysler's parts bin. Many records showed that the engines were built to meet American emission standards. Over time, Chrysler sometimes detuned the engines so the power outputs could vary between different model years. Technical documents from Jensen Motors and testing reports from car magazines give details on compression ratios, bore and stroke measurements, and differences in the carburation between the standard 383 engine and the 440 engine used in later models. In addition to the power and performance details, the handling of the Jensen Interceptor was carefully engineered. The heavy American V8 engines were balanced by a well-designed chassis and suspension system. The chassis was built on a tubular steel framework that provided rigidity for the car. The suspension system used independent front suspension with double wishbones, coil springs, and shock absorbers to improve road handling and comfort on rough surfaces. The rear of the car used a live axle with semi-elliptical leaf springs and a panhard rod to control lateral movement. These engineering choices helped to keep the car stable even when driving at high speeds on uneven roads. The steering system in the Interceptor was provided by a rack and pinion system with power assist. This system made it easier to steer the heavy car, especially when it was powered by the large V8 engine. The braking system was another important area of focus for Jensen Motors. Early models of the Interceptor had disc brakes on all 4 wheels, and later models were updated with power-assisted disc brakes that offered better stopping power. Detailed service manuals and technical bulletins from Jensen Motors show that the brake system was given much attention to ensure safety as the car's speed increased with the larger engines introduced in later models. The engine bay of the Interceptor was designed to fit the large Chrysler V8 engines. In the Mark I and early Mark II models, the 6.3-liter, 383 cubic inch engine was mounted in a front-engine rear-wheel drive layout. The engine featured a wedge-shaped combustion chamber and an OHV design that was standard for American V8s, when the engine was changed to the larger 7.2-liter 440 cubic inch unit. In the Mark III models, modifications were made to the engine bay and cooling system to handle the increased size and heat output. The cooling system included a large radiator with electric fans to maintain the proper operating temperature even when the engine was working hard. The technical documentation from Jensen Motors notes that oil pressure was carefully monitored at idle and underload to ensure the engine was properly lubricated. The transmission used in the Interceptor, known as the Chrysler TorqueFlite, was a 3-speed automatic gearbox. Even though modern cars often have more gears, the TorqueFlite was known for its reliability and ease of service. Paired with a limited slip differential, the transmission helps send power efficiently to the rear wheels, which was important given the car's high horsepower. Detailed factory records include gear ratios and fluid capacities, showing the careful attention paid to every detail of the transmission setup. The electrical system in the Jensen Interceptor was not as complex as those found in modern cars, but it was designed to meet the safety standards of the time. The wiring and lighting systems were organized around a central fuse box. Headlamps, turn signals, and dashboard instruments were wired in a way that minimized the risk of short circuits or malfunctions. Detailed wiring diagrams from Jensen Motors show how each component was connected, and service bulletins from the period indicate that any issues were quickly addressed by the service network. A very rare version of the Interceptor was the coupe, which was introduced in 1975 when Jensen Motors was facing financial difficulties. Only around 54 examples of the coupe are known to have been made. The coupe was derived from the convertible design but had a fixed roof instead of a soft top. Its styling was similar to the convertible, though it featured subtle differences in the rear window treatment and door design. After the main production run ended in 1976, there were attempts to revive the Interceptor under new companies. In the 1980s and early 1990s, Jensen Cars Limited produced a small number of updated models known as the Mark IV or Series 4. These later models maintained the original 105-inch wheelbase and a styling similar to earlier models, but they were fitted with a smaller 360 cubic inch Chrysler V8 engine. Production of these revived models was extremely limited, with only about 36 cars built before financial difficulties once again forced the company to cease production. Detailed production records, service manuals, and sales brochures from Jensen Motors provide a clear timeline of the changes made from one mark to the next. These documents show the changes in exterior trim, engine tuning, and interior layout, ensuring that each production run can be recognized by its own unique set of features. Collectors and historians continue to study these records to understand the evolution of the Jensen Interceptor over the years. In the United Kingdom, the Interceptor was priced as a luxury grand tourer. Buyers who needed a car that could cover long distances comfortably took notice of the Interceptor. Sales brochures from Jensen Motors provided detailed specifications such as engine output, dimensions, and performance figures. These brochures were aimed at buyers looking for a car that could combine practicality for long journeys with sporty performance. The pricing of the Interceptor placed it in competition with other luxury sports cars of that era, and its blend of British construction, Italian styling, and American mechanical components made it stand out in a busy market. Financial records from Jensen Motors indicate that the company faced significant difficulties during the 1970s. The energy crisis of 1973, rising fuel prices, and increased competition in the luxury car segment all put pressure on the company's finances. In 1976, Jensen was forced to stop production when the supply of parts ran out and the company went into receivership. Newspaper archives from that period give detailed accounts of the financial challenges and the impact they had on production numbers and company strategy. The year was 1970 when a striking car made its debut at the Geneva Motor Show, and in that moment the Lamborghini Jarama captured the attention of many with its blend of performance and comfort, its name echoing a Spanish river known for bullfighting, and its design reflecting the careful work of Italian engineers such as Marcello Gandini and the vision of Ferruccio Lamborghini himself. This cinematic introduction sets the stage for a detailed look at a car built during a time of change in the automotive world, when safety rules, emission standards, and the demands of the American market required makers like Lamborghini to rethink how they built their cars. The Lamborghini Jarama has its roots in a need to replace the Islero, a car that was originally built in 1968 mainly for American buyers who were beginning to demand vehicles that met new safety and emission standards. During those years, the American market was becoming increasingly important for high-end European cars, and manufacturers had to think carefully about how to design cars that were both stylish and practical for long journeys. Lamborghini had built the Islero as a grand tourer, but by the late 1960s, it was clear that a new design was needed, one that would not simply update the old model, but rather use a new approach built on a revised version of an existing platform. The result was the Jarama, which was designed using a shortened version of the Espada's chassis by about 10.7 inches in order to meet the new American safety and size rules while still retaining the spirit of earlier models. Ferruccio Lamborghini chose the name Jarama after the river and region in Spain that is famous for its bullfighting tradition, a choice that fits with the company's practice of naming its cars after bulls and places associated with strength. The Jarama was meant to be a grand tourer that could serve both as an everyday car and as a performance vehicle, and it was built with seating for 4 people in a 2+2 arrangement. Although the rear seats were smaller than the front, they still offered enough room for passengers on longer trips. When the car was first shown at the 1970 Geneva Motor Show, many experts noted that the shortened chassis gave the Jarama a more agile feel compared to the longer Espada, and the car's overall dimensions were carefully planned to balance performance and comfort for drivers who expected to travel on long highways as well as winding roads. The design of the Jarama was handled by Marcello Gandini at the Bertone Design Studio, and his work on the car is evident in every line and curve that appears on the vehicle. Gandini was known for his earlier work on famous Lamborghini models such as the Miura and the Espada, and his approach for the Jarama was to blend sportiness with practicality. The car has clean, angular lines and smooth curves, with pop-up headlights that retract neatly when not in use, maintaining a sleek look without unnecessary embellishments. The doors open in a traditional way, and every design element, including the positioning of the turn signals and the shape of the grille, was planned with both aesthetic appeal and ease of manufacture in mind. Inside the cabin, the Jarama was arranged to provide a logical and comfortable layout for the driver and passengers. The dashboard was designed with all necessary controls within easy reach, and the materials used throughout, such as leather and high-quality trim, were chosen for their durability and comfort. Every detail was arranged to ensure that even drivers of different sizes could operate the car without distraction. The interior of the Jarama was not as flamboyant as some of Lamborghini's later models, but it was designed to offer comfort on long drives while still providing an engaging driving experience. The careful selection of materials and the thoughtful layout of the instruments show that every element of the design was meant to serve both function and style. At the heart of the Lamborghini Jarama is its powerful 3.9-liter V12 engine, an evolution of the engine used in earlier models such as the 400 GT and the Islero. This engine, with 12 cylinders arranged in a V-shape, produces smooth power delivery and is fitted with 6 Weber 40 DCOE carburetors that mix fuel and air before it is burned in the cylinders. The original version of the Jarama was rated at around 350 horsepower, which allowed the car to reach speeds over 150 miles per hour. The engine was built with a focus on both performance and durability, using a light alloy material for the engine block and a carefully designed cooling system that included radiators, oil coolers, and water pumps to keep the engine temperature within safe limits during high-speed driving. In 1972, Lamborghini introduced an upgraded version of the Jarama that featured several improvements. This version, sometimes known as the Jarama S or GTS, had modifications that included a revised exhaust system, updated cylinder heads, and recalibrated carburetors. These changes brought the engine's output up to about 365 horsepower and gave the car a slightly sharper performance response without straying far from the original design. Along with these mechanical updates, minor changes were made to the body of the car, such as the addition of a hood scoop to help cool the engine and reposition turn signals that gave the exterior a modernized look. Inside the car, changes were made to the dashboard with aluminum trim and an updated console that provided a more streamlined feel, and improvements in the rear seating area allowed for better legroom and support on longer journeys. Lamborghini built the Jarama during a period when the company faced financial challenges, particularly in the early 1970s, when even its tractor division was having difficulties due to changing markets abroad. Despite these challenges, the Jarama was produced in a small run, with only 328 units built between 1970 and 1976. The limited production of the Jarama, including approximately 176 or 177 units of the original GT version and around 150 units of the upgraded S version, has made it one of the rarer models in Lamborghini's history. This small number of cars means that each unit has a unique history and is highly valued by collectors, even though the Jarama is not as well known as some of Lamborghini's other models like the Miura or the Countach. The technical details of the Jarama show a commitment to precise engineering and thoughtful design. The overall length of the car is about 176.6 inches, its width is approximately 71.7 inches, and its height is around 46.9 inches, while the wheelbase measures roughly 93.7 inches. These dimensions were selected to provide a stable and balanced ride, ensuring that the car handled well at high speeds and remained comfortable for passengers. The dry weight of the Jarama is listed at about 3,200 pounds, a figure that was reached by careful attention to the weight distribution between the front and rear axles. Engineers paid close attention to these measurements so that the car could offer both performance and safety in line with the demands of its era. The transmission in the Jarama was another important element of its design. Most models came with a 5-speed manual gearbox that allowed drivers full control over gear changes, which was important in a car designed for both everyday driving and spirited performance. For those who preferred an alternative, there was also an option for a Chrysler TorqueFlite automatic transmission, which offered a more relaxed driving experience. The pairing of the manual gearbox with the V12 engine made the Jarama a car that could respond quickly to driver input while still being comfortable on long trips. Suspension and braking systems were designed to match the car's performance. The Jarama used a suspension system that included unequal length A-arms and coil springs, along with anti-roll bars at both the front and rear, which helped to minimize body lean during cornering and maintain stability on the road. The braking system consisted of disc brakes on both the front and rear wheels, carefully matched with the tire size, typically 205 VR15, to ensure that the car could stop quickly and safely even when traveling at high speeds. The engineers of the time documented every detail, from the gear ratios in the transmission to the layout of the instrument panel, in order to provide a car that was both technically sound and reliable in everyday use. In addition to the standard production models, a special racing version of the Jarama was created by Lamborghini's test driver, Bob Wallace, who took a standard Jarama chassis and modified it for racing. Known as the Jarama Rally, or sometimes referred to as the Jarama Bob, this version was designed with the goal of adapting the car to the rigorous demands of motorsport. Bob Wallace made significant changes to the car's engine mounting, moving the engine further back in the engine bay so that the weight distribution shifted closer to an even 50-50th balance. This change required custom brackets and adjustments to the firewall and subframe, and it was intended to give the car better handling in race conditions. Bob Wallace also worked on increasing the engine's performance in the rally version by recalibrating the carburetors and adjusting the exhaust system to reduce back pressure, resulting in an increase in power from the stock 350 to 365 horsepower range to around 380 horsepower. In addition to these mechanical improvements, Wallace modified the car's bodywork by removing certain heavy components such as hinged headlights and plastic discs and replacing them with fixed, lighter alternatives, a change that reduced the overall weight by approximately 660 pounds, bringing the car's weight down to around 2,580 pounds. These modifications not only improved the acceleration and handling of the rally version, but also made the car more competitive on racetracks where every pound of weight saved counted. Further modifications in the rally version included changes to the suspension and braking systems. Racing shock absorbers, specifically Coney racing shocks, replaced the standard dampers, and the suspension geometry was adjusted to cope with the lower weight and the increased performance demands of track driving. A lightweight steel roll cage was also added to the rear section of the car to improve driver safety and increase chassis stiffness. Inside the rally version, the interior was stripped of non-essential components such as sound insulation, heavy trim, and extra wiring, and the seats were replaced with lightweight racing seats, resulting in a much more performance-focused cabin with a simplified instrument panel that displayed only the most critical information. The special racing version of the Jarama was not entered into major racing series, but it was used by Bob Wallace for extensive road testing and informal racing events. Test measurements during these sessions indicated that the rally car could reach a top speed of around 167.7 miles per hour and accelerate from 0 to 62 miles per hour in approximately 5 seconds, figures that were impressive for a car based on a Grand Tourer design from the early 1970s. Although the Jarama Rally did not achieve widespread racing success, the modifications performed by Bob Wallace showed that the car could be adapted for competitive performance when needed, and the rally version remains an interesting chapter in the overall story of the Lamborghini Jarama. Throughout its production, the Jarama was updated based on technical improvements and customer feedback. The original version, known as the Jarama GT, was produced from 1970 to 1973 and featured a straightforward design that emphasized both comfort and performance for long drives. The Jarama GT came with center-locking magnesium alloy wheels that were also used on other Lamborghini models such as the Miura and the early Espada, and these wheels helped to create a distinct look as well as contributing to the car's performance by being lightweight and strong. The interior of the GT was finished with leather seats and a well-organized dashboard, ensuring that every control was within easy reach and that the overall build quality was maintained at a high standard. The influence of the Jarama can be seen in the way later Lamborghini models were designed, and many of the lessons learned during its production have been passed down through technical documents, factory records, and interviews with engineers from the era. The car's design, which was a careful blend of traditional Lamborghini styling and modern requirements, has been recorded in technical manuals and historical publications, ensuring that every detail from the engine's configuration and the layout of the dashboard to the placement of the turn signals and the design of the exhaust system is preserved for future study. Museums such as the official Lamborghini Museum in Sant'Agata Bolognese display Ferruccio Lamborghini's personal Jarama S, and car registries along with auction records show that the Jarama remains a prized model among collectors and enthusiasts, despite its low production numbers. The story of the Lamborghini Jarama is a story of adaptation, innovation, and careful planning, where every design choice was made in response to the needs of a changing market and the technical challenges of the time. The car was built during a period when safety and emissions rules forced manufacturers to reconsider their designs, and Lamborghini's response was to create a vehicle that was smaller and more agile than its predecessors while still carrying the unmistakable style of Italian sports cars.